We have a short last-minute addition to our agenda by a colleague lawyer who was planned to participate in our conference and due to some emergency she couldn't, but thankfully at the last minute she can join us, Mrs. Lena Sandberg. I would like to take the opportunity and welcome Mrs. Sandberg to our panel and invite her to give her to give us her input. Mrs. Sandberg, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sophia. And thank you for being back again. I have been speaking on this forum many, many times, and I think it's an excellent one for communicating state aid policy, particularly in the energy field. As Sophia was saying, I was out and then in again. So thank you for the accommodation last minute, and I'm not going to take up a lot of time. The one aspect I wanted to talk to you about today is the fact that we have CSAF, which I don't think I have to address in detail, but the fact that it is based on, should we say, an untested need for renewables. We all know that with the war between Russia and Ukraine, the withdrawal from Russian gas and our general climate goals, in the sense that we want to decarbonize, we generally, all EU member states support that we have more power produced by renewables. And that has led, that was actually the underlying concept of the CSAF, that we need to give state aid to renewables. And in order to get that state aid authorized, conditions which you normally check for having aid authorized for renewables are no longer checked. In order to understand those kinds of conditions, I thought I'd just take you through why was it that we started with giving support for renewables? How did that story start? Well, it started with the fact that when you sell your energy at the energy exchange, it is organized in the merit order. So the cheapest first, and then we go up the ladder with gas, oil and gas, coal, etc., until demand has been met. And you start with the cheapest first, and then second cheapest, and so on. And the price is fixed by the type of energy that supplies the moment demand is met. So if we go from renewables first, and then typically coal, and then gas or oil, and then gas, typically it is the gas price that sets the energy price. What does that mean for the renewables? That means that when they are, as we have just gone through, they are the cheapest, they're at the bottom, they usually get their cost covered. And here I want to stop for a moment, because the energy exchange is only based on the operating cost. So you don't even talk about the construction cost. You bid in your electricity price merely on the basis of your operating cost. And that is also why renewables is at the bottom, because it has almost no operating cost and is therefore the one that is able to go first. Well, how do then renewable operators or any other operator cover their construction cost? Well, for example, in the case of the renewables, because they are not the price setters, but typically gas, there is a bit of a piece for them, or a chunk of the price that they can use to cover their construction cost. And that is, I was going to say, supposed to at least cover a large part of their cost. Except that renewables are so expensive, so they have very high construction cost, and therefore typically, even if there is a bit of additional margin for them to get their costs covered at the energy exchange, they will end up not having their costs covered. So therefore, that is, to go back to the beginning, that is the reason why we want to support renewables. So we know that no one will invest in renewables unless they know beforehand that they will get support for the additional bit of construction cost that exceeds what you can get on the energy exchange. And what is it then that we want to achieve by supporting renewables? Well, as with almost anything that we give state aid for, We want to end up in a situation where it becomes commercial. How do we do that? We give as much as possible support for renewables, more and more are constructed, and thereby the cost, both the construction cost and the operating cost, comes down. And by that, renewables should be able to cover their cost solidly on the basis of the price that can be achieved at the energy exchange. So that is the whole thinking behind support of renewables. When we were going to adopt the CSAF, the message given to the drafters were that because of the situation with Ukraine, because of the climate goals, we need renewables no matter what. We are not going to look at, as we usually do, when you want to authorize aid for renewables, whether that member state even need the energy. Normally you would say, hey, here is Greece, or here is Denmark, or here is Sweden. We want to have more renewable energy. And the question would be back to them, but do you need that additional power? Do you have power enough to cover your demand? With the CSAF, that question is not asked any longer. And therefore, you risk ending up in a situation where the supply with the additional subsidized energy that what the member state is asking to have aid for, with that new energy, well, then you oversupply the market, too much power for the demand. And I was going back to the beginning now, what does that mean for the price? If you have too much demand compared to the supply, that means that the price will go down. And as I was just explaining, it's crucial for the renewable operators to have as much as they can have covered by the energy price, or by the construction cost from the energy price at the energy exchange, to have as much as possible. And of course, the more the price drops, the worse it will become for them. And it will become worse for those that have finally achieved to become commercial. So if you have, and we do have this now, at least in Denmark, and I think it's beginning now also in Spain, we do have some renewable operators that now are able to survive solidly on the price that they get by the energy exchange. But then what happens if you then give subsidies to further renewables that then will flood the market with supply, meaning that the price will drop and that they no longer can have their costs covered? What does that mean for them? That means that they will have to leave the market. And if they will leave the market, what you will end up with is a situation where the subsidized ones, the ones that you now want to give aid for, essentially will replace the unsubsidized ones. That is the most undesired result that anyone could think of, and certainly not what one had in mind when one was writing the CSAF. So what am I saying with all of this? I'm saying that the CSAF has been written on the basis of market circumstances that are not the ones that we have today. Because, of course, if you give subsidies in a market where everybody depends on subsidies, you don't have distortions. But if you give subsidies in a market where some of them already are commercial, then you can end up in a situation where you push out the commercial ones and end up only having the unsubsidized ones. So bottom line is that if we are going to go ahead to give without any doubt support state aid for renewables, we need to have a different pair of glasses when we have a situation where we already have commercial operators on. And since we are very much stressed for time, I'm going to cut it here because I think my biggest message was on a couple of these flaws in the CSAF, and say thank you for participating. I give the floor back to Sophia.
Thank you so much, Lena, for your very interesting intervention.